This is India's highest fighter airfield. It's fully ready for operations. And News9 Plus is the first to bring you exclusive visuals and a report from ground zero of Mudh-Nyoma Airfield in eastern Ladakh. To give you an idea how high this airfield is, Mount Everest is at 29,000 feet and Mudh-Nyoma Fighter Airfield is 13,700 feet. The airfield is 3 kilometers long. It will allow the Indian military to be resupplied along the line of actual control with China. But how will it exactly help India checkmate China all along the line of actual control? Joining me to discuss this are Air Marshal Deeptendu Chaudhary, former fighter pilot and military analyst, Lieutenant General Rajiv Chaudhary, former Director General, Border Roads Organization, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Nivriti Mohan, who's returned with these amazing visuals of the just completed Mudh-Nyoma fighter airfield. But first, let's look at the exclusive footage of what a landing and takeoff on one of the world's highest fighter airfields will look like. I almost felt like I was in the cockpit of a Su-30 landing in one of the highest fighter airfields, Nivriti, and kudos to you for getting this footage back for us. I must ask you this cliched journalistic question. What did it feel like when you were there at this fighter air base that's just been completed?
It was an amazing and very thrilling feeling to be at the highest airfield in India, and
it's fully completed.
It is fully completed because nobody else has been there while it is 100% complete and ready for landing or trial landing. Anytime you may hear the trial landing is happening somewhere in December or January, whenever. The final date hasn't come yet, but it is ready for...
The first fighter is yet to land on Mudh-Nyoma, but the airfield, the advanced landing ground, is ready in all respects.
Yeah, but through our shoot, we could experience the first trial, how will first takeoff look like?
Yes, I certainly got that experience right here. It was, an out-of-body experience to see this very impressive fighter airfield. Once again, remarkable effort there, Nivriti. And you're a resident of Ladakh practically. You've been there, what? This is your second trip or your third trip to Ladakh to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Yeah, you give me that chance to perform in such a manner.
That's right. Thank you for bringing us those visuals, and I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions. But first I want to go over to Lieutenant General Rajiv Chaudhary. I'm fully aware of the fact that we have Air Marshal Chaudhary and Lieutenant General Rajiv Chaudhary, who are both namesakes, they're course mates, and they've also been on the same art course, as they were telling me. So it's good to have two old buddies together on the News9 Plus show. General Chaudhary, over to you first. Explain to us what a challenge it was for the Border Roads Organization to build this advanced landing ground. It was just an ALG, and today we see a fully functional fighter airfield, minus the fighters of course, but it's ready in all respect. How much of a challenge was it for the BRO, which has been firing on all cylinders, as Nivriti tells us, post 2020? What kind of a challenge did you have, did your organization have in building this project in record time?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and I must tell you, Border Road Organization, since Galwan incident has happened, we have taken all kind of challenges. In fact, first thing was where Nivriti also went, was construction of Umlingla, highest motorable road in the world.
Yes.
And of course, other things came up, and then Mudh-Nyoma came. Mudh-Nyoma was a very tight schedule project, where the ADAM sanction was given sometime in March 23, and we concluded the contract in August. That is a very fast work. And the project was e-Shilanyas by Honorable Raksha Mantri on 12th of September last year.
Yes.
So you see, with a gap of winters, we completed this airstrip flat in 10 months.
In
This
10
generally
months.
does not happen even in planes. Planes
Right.
also, airstrips and airfields like this will take at least 2-3 years, or maybe some places more than 2-3 years also. But then this has been absolutely accelerated paced project, and even ATC is ready. And as
Yes.
Nivriti told, the trial landing is about to happen.
Right.
The challenges physically were that the temperatures fall down to -40 because the
Right.
altitude is 13,200 feet,
Yes.
and the people get a lot of high altitude sickness. So we had to place very physically fit our cadremen as well as the laborers who are working there, and also doctors to take care of any emergencies.
Yes.
And technically also, what happens? Our machines start functioning at that rarefied atmosphere
Yes.
to a level of 40 to 50% only. And you will be amazed to understand that every day we were consuming approximately 14,000 cement bags for construction of this airstrip.
Right.
So, in a sense, 6 lakh bags were consumed for construction of this airstrip, which had to be transported from the planes.
Right.
And that whole planning was quite a exercise where we had to not only cement and other raw material
Yes.
brought. So it was a challenging task, a time-bound task, which has been done very efficiently under the leadership of Colonel Doming, who is
Yes.
the task force commander at Hanle, who is looking after Umlingla CDFD road as well as
Yes.
Likaru Migla Fukche road also. So
Right.
all these challenges were seen before, and we had chalked out all the solutions. So nothing gets delayed.
Yes, nothing gets delayed indeed. Thanks, General Chaudhary, for putting that in perspective. And Nivriti, Nari Shakti has completed this airfield in record time, 10 months. Colonel Doming, whom we've been following very closely, her work with the BRO, exceptional work, and full marks to you as well. You've been traveling quite often to the LAC and bringing us live visuals of these projects there. But it's, as General Chaudhary mentioned, 6 lakh bags of cement and an airfield that was completed in record time. So the visuals that you're seeing, I must tell you, these are the first visuals of the completed Nyoma Advanced Landing Ground. It's the first, we are the first news platform to bring you these visuals live from the LAC. This is something that has not been seen on Indian television before. And once again, Nivriti, great job, great visuals. But I must move on to Air Marshal Chaudhary about the importance of the Nyoma Advanced Landing Ground. Air Marshal Chaudhary, how does this alter the balance on the LAC?
Nivriti's had a first-hand exposure at,
Yes.
forget about where no man normally goes, but I think she's the first woman who's probably gone there in this
Yes.
manner. But that airfield, if you remember, I had mentioned it in my last, in the last discussion we had.
Yes.
We are actually sandwiched from 3 sides,
Right.
practically.
Yes.
By Pakistan and China.
Yes.
Pakistan on the west, north and east, we have China.
Right.
And so every airfield, and if you remember, I mentioned the 6 sisters, those airfields which are there
Yes.
from right from BBO stretching right down to Nyoma and further down to Fukche. Since it's a disputed area and it's an area we have a lot of history, and as I mentioned, 62 war was, I think, eye opener for us.
Yes.
Air operations are critical there, not only for logistics. Earlier it was critical for logistics.
Right.
Today it is critical for ensuring a military level of what should I say, preparedness out there.
Yes.
At those high altitudes, because it's a territorial dispute. The army occupies one of the Indian Army, brave soldiers occupy one of the most inhospitable terrains in the world.
Right.
And but in that terrain, if you do not have air power,
Yes.
you are in serious trouble.
Yes.
In fact, 3 aspects. One is the pure logistics, because the speed and rate at which you can bring in supplies is not it's not season dependent, and it can go on pretty much as long as the weather is clear.
Right.
So that's one huge advantage.
Yes.
And it takes a long time to build up such a capability by road.
Right.
That's the first. So from a logistic perspective, from the army's supply lines, ammunition, movement of men and material, In fact, even for this incredible engineering feat of
Yes.
6 lakh cement bags, I mean,
Yes.
it wouldn't have just been there. It's not like
It had to be
building in Noida or someplace. It's somewhere else.
Right.
And that is the first important thing. Logistics is critical. Second is ability or air defense of that area. With the increased PLAF presence in Tibet area,
Yes.
they will sort of push their test the boundaries. So that is very critical that we have an adequate air defense capability over our sovereign airspace.
Right.
And the last and the most important aspect is the offensive air power, which I spoke about last time.
Yes.
And the criticality to surface operations or any contingency in this region.
Right, absolutely critical for India's posture along the LAC, and as Air Marshal Chaudhary mentioned, that it's located at a very critical juncture because that airfield looks at both Pakistan and China, Pakistan to the west and China to the east. But Nivritti, when you were on the ground there, you've literally tracked this project from the time that it was flagged off more than 10 months ago. What were the challenges that you saw that the people on the ground faced while they were putting this project together?
Oh, okay. Let me tell you one of the examples, one or two examples. When I was there in November, and the minimum temperature on that day when we were covering this was minus 10 degrees. And
minus
it was
10 degrees.
Minus 10 minimum temperature, and it was November.
Yes.
And it falls to minus 35 degrees. Over
minus
there.
35
minus
degrees.
35 degrees.
That particular location.
Right.
Right.
And there was a worker who told me that because his hemoglobin rises, he has to donate go to a lay every 3 months, and he has to donate his blood so that he keeps in right shape of his health.
Right.
So that is the kind of difficulty that people who work there, they are facing, and until this is December, they are still working there on the airfield. And if we talk about the strategic area that it is located in,
let's see that. If you can zoom in onto what Nivritti is just showing us right here.
This is Nyoma airfield.
Yes.
You can see this small airfield over here.
Right.
And if we zoom out, you'll see this is Indus River here.
Right.
So across the Indus are the Tibetan mountains under China.
Yes.
And we have been hearing about Demchok village.
Yes.
So you see, this is Demchok in India, and this is Demchok in China.
So it's literally, that's the point where the two sides are the closest to each other.
The area of contention where disengagement has happened now. So along the Indus River, all the villages, border villages are there, including Chushul and Razangla, where the war had happened.
Yes.
And so, and this is the location of the airfield, just 35 kilometers.
Just 35 kilometers
from
away
LAC.
from the LAC. So, and that's a project that General Chaudhary mentioned was completed in a record time, 10 months. 10 months is, I haven't heard of airfields being constructed even on the plains, as he said, in 10 months. What to talk
this
of
is
the mountains.
First airfield which has been constructed under the command of a woman.
That's correct.
Strategic airfield.
Yes, first strategic airfield to be built by a woman. That's Colonel Ponun Doming, who's a resident of, interestingly, Arunachal Pradesh, which is another state which has a large LAC. But you know, General Chaudhary, you were mentioning about the challenges that the BRO has faced while building projects like this. But you know, in the last 4 years, we've also been listening to the fact that the BRO has of course been firing on all cylinders when it comes to infrastructure post Galwan along the LAC. Is it right to believe that today, 4 years later, more than 4 years later, we are in a very good position when it comes to infrastructure along the LAC? You have airfields like Nyoma, ALGs that Nyoma, you have bridges, you have highways. All of these have to a large extent improved our readiness posture along the LAC. Do you believe that today, more than 4 years after Galwan, we are in a much better position vis-a-vis China along the LAC? Or is there a critical point, say a year from now or 2 years from now, where you believe that we will have finally got the ability to move simultaneously along the LAC? General Chaudhary.
Yeah, that's again a good question. You see, we started very late on shrinking this gap between India and China. China has been doing it since 1960s. We also started, but then our pace was very slow.
Yes.
And we left a lot of buffer zones not to be touched basically to thinking that it was a regressive thinking, frankly speaking,
Yes.
that adversary should not use that to come into our territory.
Yes, the
But of late, the thinking at the highest levels has changed,
Yes.
and there have been a lot of reforms. And post Galwan, especially, the pace has doubled. And
Yes.
just to give you some idea on statistics, since last 4 years, the budget of BRO has been increased to by 160%. So definitely it is all function of money.
Yes.
And when, of course, the capacity has always been there, but then the funds were not coming in.
Right.
And a lot of machines have been bought, and we have shrunk that gap
Yes.
considerably. Today,
Yes.
we are sitting all along the LAC from eastern Ladakh to central sector in Uttarakhand and
Yes.
Himachal Pradesh, and to eastern sector, as you just mentioned, Arunachal and Sikkim.
Yes.
So we are just bang on the LAC, and that I will, if I make a statement like that, that infrastructure accelerated pace has also contributed a lot in this road to Kazan agreement,
Yes.
which has happened very recently on 23rd October.
Yes.
Infrastructure has really given a shake up to China,
Yes.
that our forces, our complete security matrix has moved up,
Yes.
which was not expected by China. They never
Right.
thought India will start making roads and tunnels. Just to give you an idea,
Yes.
in last years before Galwan, we had just made 4 tunnels, and
Right.
now 4 years we have made 4 tunnels. We are working on 10 tunnels, and we are in advanced planning stage of 8 tunnels.
Right.
And bridges are increasing. The
Yes.
rate of bridging has increased by 300%. The
Right.
roads are increasing. So it is very good and heartening thing to say, in fact, matter of pride,
Yes.
that our gap, what we had earlier, has really shrunk, and we are just opposite Chinese post on the LAC.
Right.
And that has given a lot of extra confidence and extension to our troops, which are
Yes.
deployed on the LAC.
We are closing the capability gap, the infrastructure gap with China along the LAC. And a very important point that you mentioned is that it's possibly because of this gap being closed that the road to peace and a de-escalation has been signaled just last month. But there's another aspect that you mentioned, which was the change in the mindset, the fact that there's been an explosive investment in infrastructure. Clearly the political leadership is unlikely to repeat the mistakes of the past. And the other mistake of the past was the fact that the Indian Air Force was not deployed in the 1962 war. And that remains one of the biggest mysteries of the 1962 war. Why did India not deploy its Air Force? And Air Marshal Chaudhary, I was there in Ladakh after the Galwan incident, and it was absolutely heartening to see that the very first force that was deployed was the Indian Air Force. It was right there at Leh Airfield and in all the other airfields along the LAC, signaling the fact that the Indian Air Force was unlikely to sit out of this conflict, a possible conflict, that is. But explain to us why flying along the LAC, where you're looking at airfields of 14,000 feet, and the Chinese also are literally sitting on the plateau across. They have similar restrictions on operating on high altitudes. Tell us why it is so different to fly along these Himalayan heights, yet it's so essential to operate along the LAC. Air Marshal Chaudhary.
It's a very interesting aspect in this entire discussion. What emerges out is that one is building up of infrastructure.
Yes.
And presence of service additionally, that is the Air Force, which incidentally, just to put things in perspective, in 1962, Air Force had deployed.
Yes.
It was just that it was
in a support
not
role.
offensively.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Offensive air power. That's the word I missed. It's offensive air power was not used in 1962. It was a supporting role. They were doing CAS evac and supplies, but the offensive air power was left out of it. But please continue, Air Marshal Chaudhary.
Absolutely. The AMX tanks which were landed there by
Yes.
AN-12 actually saved the day. So the criticality of air power was visible then.
Yes.
How the tanks moved in time and actually saved us that airfield. But what is important here is that, like you mentioned, high altitude operations are not easy.
Yes.
There, all those aspects. I will not go into details, which I think pretty much everyone is aware of. There's a significant difference in payload capability, carrying capability from operating high altitudes in airfields.
Right.
So when you have a high altitude airfield along the borders, and in Tibet, the two critical airfields opposite the area are Hotan and Gargungsa.
Yes.
And if you take into consideration Skardu, which is just north of Srinagar and the Kashmir Valley.
Yes.
So between Pakistan and PAF, they have sort of covered 3 air bases which have now air power reach over our surface held positions.
Yes.
And that makes it critical. So if Indian Air Force is not there, these two air forces will have a free run.
Yes.
So it is critical not only for sovereignty, defending the sovereign airspace in peacetime, in operations and conflicts, offensive air power capability, which these airfields will all come into play, right from Srinagar, Kargil, Leh, Ladakh, right up to from DBO in the north down to now Nyoma. It is not just the logistics; it is about the fighting capability and the asymmetric advantage we bring in at this point in time, because the Chinese airfield, being at high altitudes themselves, are limited in their launch capability with a number of weapons it can get airborne with. Weapons, stroke, fuel, it's a trade-off.
Yes.
So for air defense presence, this is a very critical aspect.
Right.
So this airfield actually brings in a huge strategic perspective into this entire region. And one quick mention I would want to make is, why is this so critical? Because the Pakistani Air Force and the Chinese Air Force have been interacting very closely together.
Right.
The Chinese Air Force was adequately skilled, huge in numbers, built up the capability. Pakistani Air Force, operational experience, skilled Air Force, but not enough platforms.
Right.
So it's a perfect mix of both, and they are strategic partners.
Yes.
So they've been carrying out air exercises called the Shaheen from 2011 onwards, and Shaheen 10 just finished end of last year. What has it brought to the table? The Pakistanis have an exposure to Chinese advanced platforms like the Sukhoi series, which we have.
Yes.
It gets a whole lot of electronic warfare, AWACS, support and capability, along with similar platforms.
Right.
China, the J10 and the other JF-17 and the Chinese AWACS. Most importantly, it gets a heads up into IF tactics, which Pakistan is, and that's his bread and butter.
Yes.
And the last but the most important thing, which I want to flag here before I call it, is that it brings in a collusive air power capabilities. You have JF-17 and ZDK AWACS aircraft, and they have flown in each other's platforms during the exercises.
Right.
Any conflict with either China or Pakistan, you can have the air power of the other country coming up in support with a degree of deniability.
Yes.
So it's a critical aspect. So collusive air power is a threat which is very, very serious and most likely to happen, more likely to happen than a collusive surface operation.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Himanshu Chaudhary, for outlining the threat that we face and the reason why Nyoma is so critical to that part of the world where it actually faces what you mentioned, the collusive air power capability that both the PAF and the PLAAF could bring to bear on our ground forces. And that's one reason why Nivritri traveled there to eastern Ladakh and brought us these exclusive visuals of this one very strategic air base along the LAC, that's at Nyoma. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening to talk about what Nyoma means for India's security matrix along the LAC, and of course Nivritri, to you as well for bringing us those excellent visuals from the ground. Thank you very much.